Cheap houses suck for 5 reasons. I was inspired to make this video because somebody over at BiggerPockets said steer clear of properties over $50,000 because there's too much risk. Well, let me give you 5 reasons why I think that's a bunch of baloney. The first thing is appreciation. Yeah, look, sure, you could just buy a bunch of $50,000 houses, but the bottom line is, when you buy cheap houses, one of the biggest benefits of owning real estate is gone. When you own and control real estate, and you take advantage of basically the only thing that makes Grant Cardone's Cardone Capital money, appreciation, that is leveraged appreciation, you kind of give up one of the most massive benefits of real estate, and instead, you're just stuck with all the headaches of real estate. Let's do a quick example. Let's say you own 5 $50,000 houses. Great, you got $250,000 worth of real estate. Prices go up 10%, congratulations, you got yourself an extra 25 grand. Well, now let's say you own 5 $500,000 houses. You have 10x'd. Well, now you own $2.5 million of real estate, and 10% appreciation would mean $250,000 of growth in net worth. Number 2, I'm a believer that tenants overall kind of suck because they're more humans that you have to deal with. And the bottom line is humans are fraught with problems. And the more humans you have to deal with, the more headaches and the more stress you have. In fact, all those entrepreneurs that are like, I want to have 100 employees, you're just asking for a heart attack generally. So when we talk about real estate, let's be real. Would you rather have 5 single-family houses with 5 tenants living in quality houses, houses that you could afford to fix up and leverage appropriately and capitalize on the appreciation of, or would you rather have 10 times as many tenants, that is 50 tenants, to have the same appreciation or the same basically boost to your net worth? To me, it's a no-brainer. I don't like cheap houses because it means I have to deal with more tenants. Number 3, when you buy cheap houses, you're actually incentivized not to renovate the property. Because here's the bottom line. You look at a little master bath like this and you go, let's redo the bathroom shower, let's redo a vanity and a toilet over here. Well, you might be spending 5 to 8 grand just in the bathroom. And all of a sudden you look at it and you go, wait a minute, why would I spend 10% to 15% of the value of the entire property on one bathroom? That means if you do a kitchen remodel for 25 grand, you just spent 50% of the value of the property on a kitchen remodel. It would make much more sense for you to literally just buy the house like a clunker car and Uber it around, that is just milk the cash from it, leave it in the crappy condition it's in, which guess what, is now going to lead to even worse tenants who find this stuff acceptable, which leads to more headaches for you, and because it's so cheap you have to have more of those headaches. But there's no reason for you to ever care about things like safety things such as electrical or plumbing issues to protect your tenants by installing like GFCI outlets or whatever, which are pretty cheap on a $500,000 house, but on a $50,000 house it's like, do I put in the GFCI to save my tenant's life or do I put in this? And then you don't, and you end up getting sued because you cut corners and didn't follow building safety standards because it didn't make financial sense. Now here's the other thing that cheap houses lend themselves to. The reason the houses are cheap is because they're in areas that aren't as desirable. Imagine that. The market evaluates how desirable areas are, and then prices are higher or lower based on that. So what does it mean when houses are cheap? They're usually in areas with declining populations, which also means higher vacancy and also means tenants who might be losing their job, which also means more crappy tenants. Now, this is not to discriminate against people who live in inexpensive houses, but the odds are if the houses are cheap, they're located in an area, an overall region. It's not discriminatory at all. We're not talking about like one area that's bad within one city versus another. I'm talking about an entire county that has lower prices. There's a reason, and that reason is probably going to translate into more headaches for you. Bottom line. Now, the 5th reason I hate cheap houses is the financing sucks. First of all, let's be real. The financing process in general sucks. Nobody likes going through all this paperwork where at the end of the deal you feel like the people are going to ask you for your blood type and the birth rights to your next child because there's so much paperwork involved. Well, why do you want to go through that headache on, let's say, a $40,000 loan when you can go through that headache on a $400,000 loan and it's that same headache. That's not even to mention that most mortgage brokers and bankers don't even want to do loans for under $100,000 because there's no profit in them. The only places that usually finance on cheap houses are going to be local credit unions, and they're usually doing these for a loss. They're usually doing these just to get your business towards something else. So to me, these are 5 straight up no-brainer reasons why cheap houses suck. Now let me just have one final, bam, nail in the coffin for our BiggerPockets writer who says you should never buy a house for over $50,000. The overarching reason he gives as to why you should never buy a house for over $50,000 is risk. He looks at it as, well, hey, the first 5 deals he ever did, he lost money. And so he's like, well, if I'm gonna put 50 grand into a deal, I may as well just put 50 grand into a smaller house because the odds of me losing money are less. I mean, it's only 50 grand. And he kind of compares that to the idea of, well, if I was gonna buy a really expensive house, there's a greater risk that I might lose more money. And I think what he's getting at is if the value of a 50 grand house goes down 10%, you lose 5 grand. If the value of a $500,000 house goes down 10%, you lose 50 grand. So I think that's what he's getting at. But to me, it completely goes against everything I talk about in the real estate investing course, which is that you're investing to find wedge deals. And guess what? Wedge deals, the bigger the deal, the more of a wedge and the more protection for you. You get a wedge on a $50,000 house, you get a $5,000 wedge, that's nothing. That doesn't protect you against anything. You get a wedge deal on a $500,000 house and it's $50,000 to $100,000 of a wedge, that's protection. That's what we talk about in the real estate investing course. Also, appreciation. That was our first reason we hated cheap houses. If there's more appreciation over the long run on more expensive houses, you create more equity, you create more net worth faster. To me, that's insulation against risk. So to do this 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like, ooh, well, I'm only gonna put 50 grand into the deal because if I put more than 50 grand in, I might have to part with that money. Real estate is too risky. If you think real estate is too risky, you know what? Keep renting. I'll keep taking the wedge deals. See you later.